Alright guys, so I'm here with another review on UFC 2 that just came out. So let's hop right into it. I have notes written down, so I'm gonna try to hold them up to a moderate height, so I'm not just looking down all the time. So yeah, so let's just get to the review. Well, the things, I have them in sections, so I'm going to do the realism aspect of the review first. The realism is amazing in this game. The graphical changes are noticeable and far more superior than the first game. As soon as I opened the game, you're opened with a UFC 189 intro with Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald, and you're in the last round, so you're in the fourth round of the fight, and you can basically control it of however way you want to. So that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool way to introduce it, and it's kind of like a little tutorial section. It's almost like Street Fighter V in a way, how they had you fight Ken at the very first of the game. You were Ryu and Ken fighting, so they kind of did it similar to that, except you can finish the fight in this game. The random hits and the randomness, the hits and the submissions. Now the randomness, you can go into a fight fresh. You'll come out, the referee will say, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go." And you could get hit, and then all of a sudden you're stunned, and then you'll get knocked out within like 5 seconds. I think my quickest fight on there was 5 seconds, and it's just crazy. Like sometimes you'll win the fight instantly, sometimes you'll lose instantly, and sometimes you just can't finish the fight at all because sometimes the AI is just, I don't know, the AI is just educated. I don't know what they did with the AI that's so much different from the first game, but it's very noticeable and I like it. I think they did a good job with the AI system. The the hits, like I said, was that they feel real. Like when the sound effects of the hits are way more apparent than the first game. The first game just had I think generic hit sounds, things like that. But this game has improved sounds of when you make contact. I know when you do the hook kicks and the big punches, it's like a really loud slap sound, like an impact sound, which is like real life. So it's amazing. Now the submissions is one of my favorite parts because I've seen over 1,000 UFC fights. So, and I do jiu-jitsu myself, so I know what it's like when it comes to submissions. Like you'll be going to do an armbar, and then in the game there'll be like a little green stick. Like if you guys played the first game, you know that there's the up, right, left, and down. And if you're doing a submission, you have to hold the button that the AI is pressing. And if you're defending one, then you just put the right stick a bunch of directions until your gate goes all the way to the point, and then you can get out of it. But when you're doing a submission, you're defending it, and you're doing the same direction as the opponent, but then there will be a little green prompt instead of a blue one to advance. And once you do that, you can transition from like a triangle to an armbar, or you can transition from an armbar to an omoplata. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's real. So they really did something with that. So I'm glad that they put that in the game as well. You can do gate escapes too. Like you can put your feet off of the gate and escape over. I never done that yet, but I saw it in one of the trailers, so I know you can do it. The fighter likeness and the themes for the character, for not characters, for the fighters. So the fighter likeness and fighter themes. The themes are exact. They have Ronda Rousey's Bad Reputation theme. They have Conor McGregor's theme, Holly Holm's theme, Robbie Lawler's theme. Um, so I really found that they got that on point as well. Like I said, hardcore fan here, so everything that's real I'm looking for, and it just really hit home for me because they finally got the realism aspect of UFC. I mean, the first game was, it looked good, it looked really good. Like I always said that next to the Order, that game had probably some of the best visuals on the PlayStation that I've seen personally, but now that's not apparent because this game looks even better than the first game, and the characters have their taunts. Like Conor McGregor has his taunts, Nate Diaz has his taunts, Anderson Silva has his taunts, It's really crazy. My screen keeps going to sleep. And it's awesome that they have the realism of the characters and the themes of the characters. Now, there are themes that are missing, but that's here nor there. The taunts, like I said, are there. The mannerisms are there as well, like the fighting stances. Like, though the characters, if you're inactive for a little bit amount of time, the characters will start like doing their little mannerisms, like when they're just standing there. And that was pretty cool that they got that in there because I again, when you're a hardcore fan, you look for every little thing that's correct. So I'm glad that they finally got all that correct as well. Now the commentary is on point in this game from the first game. The first game, the commentary was a little slow at points, and sometimes they wouldn't catch things that you're doing. But in this game, they catch almost everything. I think they catch about 90% of things that you do, and if you get injuries in career mode, they'll mention that in the fight. Like they'll be like, oh, like if you do heavy bag training where it focuses on your left and right hand power, then if you get injured and then which takes away attribute points when you get injured. By the way, that's all that it really does. It just takes away, like if you injure your left hand or your right hand, it just says -10. So if your power is 73, -10, it goes down to 63. So you won't do any more power. You'll do less power, which is realistic. And the commentary addresses that. Like, I was just sitting there playing through the game, and then all of a sudden, Mike Goldberg was just like, oh, yeah, he has a left-hand injury in camp, and it's very hard. And I'm just like, holy shit, like, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm glad that they finally got that in the game. And they recall your last fights as well. So if you got a knockout, they say, oh, they won their last fight by knockout. They're looking for a finish here. Or if you got a submission, they'll say, oh, well, they got that fight won by a wicked submission. They don't say those exact words, but they just do a recall. Like, they say something along those lines. Like, those be like, if you got a knockout, oh, what an amazing finish by knockout that fighter got. Or if you get a submission, this fighter showed amazing submission skills last fight that got him the win. Things like that. So it's just crazy how EA got this second game correct. I just can't get over that enough. And like I said, the commentary is better. It's more detailed, things like that. They don't just they're not late a lot of the times compared to the first game. Like a lot of the first game, you would already have won the fight, and then like 2 seconds later, Joe Rogan would be like, "Oh, and it's over!" Like that happened 2 seconds ago, Joe. Like you're late. But I just found that was great. They finally just got the little details that were missing that makes the UFC fights complete and things like that. It made the game even more complete as well. The glove touches are there again, and depending on who the fighters are, they won't glove touch. I don't know if it's with all of them. I know that when my very first fight that I did on Fight Now, which is just, you can just go in and fight, I did McGregor versus Diaz, and they didn't touch gloves. So I don't know if they put the fighter rivalries in the game that they don't display right away. Like, they don't show that these fighters hate each other. But if you watch UFC, you know that they hate each other, so they don't touch. But all I know is that Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor did not touch gloves when I did it. So I found that was cool because they just recently had a little rivalry. And, no, was that? Or am I thinking? I might be thinking Jose Aldo. I'm thinking Jose Aldo and McGregor. Aldo and McGregor, they didn't touch, but I think they did in the real fight. But I don't know. It was either Nate Diaz or Jose Aldo that I was using against Conor McGregor, and they didn't touch. Moral of the story is they didn't touch, so that was pretty cool. The pre and post fight likeness. Now, they have fighter personalities that you can use in the career mode, but then they also have the actual fighters. Like they have Joanna's fighter likeness, like when before she comes in, she gets down on her knees and does her prayer and stuff like that, and gets in the ring. And then when the announcer announces her name in the octagon, she does her little pre-fight gesture, which was spot on. They do. Who else do they do? I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to think of all of the ones that they have. They have John Dodson's walk in. Correct. They have Lyoto Machida, things like that. But the only one that I really seen in effect was Johanna's one. That was one that really kind of really stood out. GSP as well. George St. Pierre has one as well that is really spot on. Now, that was the realism aspect of it. Now let's get to the gameplay section. The gameplay is very smooth compared to the first game, and it's very smooth in itself. Now, when you play it, it's very easy to pick up. There's no difficulty. There's no learning curve, I should say. Like when you're playing against just AI and just you want to play against or yeah, if you just want to play against AI and just pick up the game, it's very easy to learn. The gameplay is very smooth, and I didn't really see a lot of bugs in it. There wasn't. The first game had a lot of problems. Like there was a lot of. When it comes to gameplay, there was a lot of things that could have been better, but you could tell that the first game was almost like a trial run. Like, let's see how well this game's going to do, and if it does well, then we'll put everything in the second game, because people will buy it. But all I know is this game's very smooth, and they really hit the nail on the head when it comes to the gameplay. It's strategic in every fashion. Now, you can't just go in like the first game and just mash buttons and get the win, because the AI, there is an adaptive AI difficulty. I also forgot to mention that in the realism. So let's go back to the realism for a second. The realism, there's also actual Ultimate Fighter coaches. So there's John Dodson versus Demetrius Johnson. There is Velasquez and Verdum, and there was another one that I did. Unless those were, yeah, I only did two story modes. So Velasquez and Verdum, Dodson. Oh, and there was Edgar and Mendez. There's Edgar and Mendez. So I don't know how many others there is, but it's different every time you start one. And there's adaptive AI difficulty, which the adaptive AI difficulty, it just gets harder as you climb up the higher ranks. So I thought that was pretty cool. I don't really like that personally because I'm not in it for a challenge. I just play the game just to play the game. Like I don't like it a challenge as in like I don't like it to be like too difficult. Like I'm still kind of just learning the game myself. Like I kind of just go in for the knockout, things like that. So there's adaptive AI difficulty. Now back into the gameplay section. There is training camp. The training in camp is apparent. Now, when in career mode, when you do the training in the camps, if your character has been very slow punch speed or kick speed, when you put it up pretty high from about 50 to 80, you can really see a big change. I mean, in the first game, there was a little bit of a change that you could see, but I found in this game, again, they focused on all the little details. So the training in the camp is actually apparent, and you can see that the training in the camp has actually done something and has improved your fighter. The injuries affect performance in the fight. Like I said, if you get an injury on movement, for example, you won't be able to move as fast. If you get an injury on left hand or right hand, left foot or right foot, you can't kick or punch, as your kicks and punches won't have much power. Or if you get ground injuries, you won't be able to do submissions as good. So I found that was pretty cool because you can't get that in the first game. Like the first game, you just do training, get points for that. You just unlock attribute points, and you can put up points for yourself. So this, again, everything is just spot on when it comes to detail. EA really did it with this one. So the training in the camp is the training, or no, how to put it? The injuries do affect your performance in the fight. Now, the 360 movement adds to the realism. They added this in the game, which is similar to Fight Night. How the other one where you could just go left, right, and then down and up. This game, you can do like a 360 movement. Like your character will just start going like this, like Fight Night. For all those that played Fight Night, you guys know what I'm talking about. Or those who haven't played Fight Night, which you should go and play it right now. It's a really good game. But well, if you guys know like how boxers move, like they don't just go left and right and down and up. They go all the way around. Like Mike Tyson, he was going like back and forth like this all the time. So you can finally do that. So that was pretty cool. I'm glad that they added that in again. Just adds to the realism aspect. Everything just adds to the realism in this game. Everything that makes the game great is real. So it's just cool how they put that in there finally. I don't know why they didn't put it in the first game, but the 360 movement is in there for those who did want it. Now the submission transitions, like I mentioned before in the realism part, it I don't know why they did not put this in the first game, because the first game was pretty realistic when I first played it, but then when you go to do a submission, it kind of just locks you in that submission. Like, you'll go to do an armbar, then you could only do the armbar, then if you lose the armbar, you'll be in side control, and then you're just stuck. And or you'll be in side control, or you'll be in mount, or you'll be in guard again, and you'll just be like, oh, well, now I just have to get up. And so that was pretty cool that they put that in there. Now, let's get into the career mode. The career mode, the Ultimate Fighter section does return, where your character goes through a certain amount of fights, and you can make it into the final UFC. Now I think there is 3 fights. There's 3 to 4 fights that you do in there. I think it might go up to 4. I don't know, but I win all the fights. So all I know is there is 3 that you go through. There's I think there's the elimination round. Then there's the semifinal. Then there's the final. Then you do the final is when you're in the UFC fight. So that's back in here. And they have the Fight Night style heavy bag training in career mode. So again, those of you who played Fight Night, there will be like 2 levels. I'm gonna try to do that so it doesn't fall. There's like 2 levels of the bag. There's this level and there's this level on the bag. This is the high and this is the low. And the high will be highlighted, so you could only hit the high level. And then this level is black and this level is yellow. So if you hit this level, you won't get any points. But if you hit the highlighted part, you'll get points. So you just keep hitting the highlighted part, and then when it changes, you hit the lower part, and then you'll keep getting points. So it's like the Fight Night style. The character customization is miles ahead of the first game. Now, there's sliders in this game. There's not just fights. There's not just faces that you can select, and hair and stuff like that. You can actually sculpt your face in this game, and that was pretty awesome. I mean, I'm always for sliders when it comes to character customization, because it adds to the game, or not the game, it adds to the customization of your character. It really allows you to get in depth with your created character, and it's just cool that they did that. I'm glad that they finally put sliders in this game, and just made it so in the body types back. You can make everything's just it's copy and paste with sliders, which that's what they needed. So good on you, EA. Then they have tattoo layers, so you can almost put as much tattoos as you want, because there's people out there that are just tattooed to the gills, and you can actually do that. So, and there's a lot of tribal tattoos that you can make your own sleeves out of. So there will be like a tribal design that you could put on the shoulder up here, and then you can find another design that looks like it can connect to it, so you can size it up and make it so it connects to it, and then you can make like a whole layer of an arm, and you can make basically your own tattoo sleeves. And I found that was really awesome. I did that on like 2 or 3 of my created fighters. The women's divisions are in this career mode. You can either import fighters from the women's divisions, the strawweight and the bantamweight, or you can create your own strawweight or bantamweight. So I'm glad they put the women in the career. That's what we needed. It adds diversity and it adds variety in the gameplay instead of just playing men all the time, and it just gets boring. The longevity depends on your fight style. Now, I realized this in my second playthrough when I used an imported fighter, and my first fighter, I just went for knockouts all the time. I did the occasional submission here and there, but if you just go for just knockouts, and you'll get hit yourself and you'll get stunned, it just depends on your amount of hits that you take. So if you just go for the knockout all the time and you're just having dog fights in there, your longevity will go very, 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 very far down, because you're getting hit and you're taking a lot of punishment. And then I realized that in my second playthrough, that when I did a lot of submissions, my longevity bar would go up a little slower than the it would go up a little slower than my first playthrough. Now, your longevity doesn't go from full to low. It goes from full to empty. It goes from empty to full. So when it's empty, you have full longevity. But then as you do fights, it goes up, and then it goes up near the retirement part, and then your bar just fills up. But I realized that I got I got around four, or no, I got around 5 to 6 extra fights because I chose to do submissions, so I took less damage. Like a lot of the times, the fighters would just take me down. I'm just like, oh, you're gonna get tapped out, and I took no damage because I was lighting the fighter up, and they decided to take me to the ground. I submitted them. I took no damage. You can level up perks and moves. So you'll have perks from the first game that you guys know, the attributes, or not attributes, the abilities, I should call them. The abilities which you could get heavy hands, so your hands would do more power. You could get ones where your kicks would do more power. You could do ones where you would recover from health events faster, which means once you get rocked and then your character moves slow, like your character will just start like almost stumbling. That's a health event, and you can sort of just recover from them quicker. But this game, you can level them up. So you'll have like level 1 of all these perks. So you'll have like heavy hands, level 1. Um, the kick one's called Taekwondo, which you get more wobbles and stuns from kicks. So you'll get that level 1. Workhorse, where you'll get less stamina use from transitions, which means getting up and just transitioning from, if the enemy has you in mount, you can get to half guard, things like that. And you can level them up to 5 levels from 1, and that's apparent also. You can really see a difference in that. Like when I get the lucky punch on me, I'll get hit and then I'll be stunned for about a second compared to like 4 or 5 seconds when it's not leveled up. And the moves you can also level up too, so you can get like the spinning back fist. You can get a hook kick in this game. They added a few new moves too. The hook kick is new, and it's very powerful when you level it up. So all the moves, you can see those level ups are apparent because you'll have like a hook kick, or it has decent power. Like if you catch them at the right time on a counter, you'll stun them, especially if you have the Taekwondo perk equipped. But if you have it leveled up as well, sometimes you can just knock somebody out with that hook kick, or you'll just really stun the shit out of them, and they'll just flop around because the ragdoll physics in this game are good too. So they'll just ragdoll and fall to the ground, and then all of a sudden the fight will be over. So I found the level ups were really good too, because that will bring us to the next one, which some fighters, there will be an occasional fighter that will give you some trouble, and sometimes you have to level up these moves, and sometimes as your character gets older and closer to the retirement part, you can see that it doesn't have the same, it actually adds that realism aspect in it too. Like your character just doesn't have the power and speed that you used to have from when you were younger. So when you get really old, and you'll just you won't do as much damage as you did before. So leveling up those moves will help you a little bit more from when the age starts to take over. And now you can use existing fighters in career mode. You can import fighters, your favorite fighters, and use them in career mode. Like if you want to use John Jones, you can. If you want to use Anderson Silva, you can. If you want to use Ronda Rousey, you can. So I'm glad they put that in the game, because I wanted to use Anderson Silva. He's my favorite fighter of all time. And then there's John Jones, things like that. But I wanted to use him in the first game, and I couldn't use him. I could only create my own fighter. So I just found that the first game was just such a trial run, and then they just put everything in the second game, which isn't the best business, but hey, you got it done with this game, so I'm glad you did that. The variety in opponents. Now, the first game had when you sometimes, like, I remember I fought like the same guy 4 or 5 times, and this was before I was champion. No, this was after I was champion. But the opponents in this game, there's more of them. Like, especially in the created part. Now, I used Betch Kohea for the imported character for my second career, and when I used her, I fought a lot of random people. Like, you won't just fight actual fighters a lot compared to the first game. Like, the first game, you'd fight quite a bit of actual fighters. But I found in this game, if you use, not even depending on who you use, like when I used her or when I used my created fighter, I fought a varied mixture of actual fighters and created fighters. And it adds variety in opponents. Like, you won't just get bored, be like, oh, I beat this person already, I'm going to fight them again. It happens, but not as much as the first game. Like I said, the first game, I fought the same guy 4 or 5 times. In this game, you fight the same person maybe 2 or 3 times, depending on how long your career actually goes, because, like I said before, it depends on your fight style. So if you get those few extra fights from doing a lot of submissions instead of just going for the knockout all the time, you might run into the same person you might run into the same person more often than not. But if you don't have as long as a career, you'll see that the variety in opponents is really huge. Now, the obstacles in this game, there's short notice fights, and there's times in training camp where you just won't be able to complete a full camp, which is awesome. It's real. And there's sometimes where you can't even do some things in camp, like the obstacles when it comes to short fight notice, you'll only have one training session because you might have a fight like next week. So you'll just be fighting, or you'll come out of a fight, and you'll get like a little promo video. It's not even an actual video either. It's like gameplay footage, but it's actual fighters. And then it'll say short notice fight, or no, that's for fight challenge. The short notice fights, it's actually a window, and it tells you like a short notice fight, you'll gain more fans, things like that. And then if you click it, it'll show the opponent that you have to fight. Usually, or actually not usually, every time that I've taken a short notice fight, it was against an actual fighter, and you'll only get one training session to do it. So I found that was an obstacle, because you'll just be like, oh, I don't have time to do a full camp. What do I have to focus on? What can I do to make this fight better? So that's pretty cool. The affected time in training, which again, you will only get one training session because it's a short notice fight, and some training isn't available. So you'll come from a fight, and it'll say, no one could find your stand-up coach, so you can't do stand-up this week. Or there was an accident in the gym and your mats got ruined, so you can't do ground game in the gym this week. So so if you're just like, oh, I'm just going to be a submission specialist, I'm going to get my submissions up to 100, and you just keep rushing to do submissions, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I can't do submissions this time, what am I going to do? So it kind of gets you thinking on your feet that way too. So you're like, okay, I have to change up my whole game plan. So if you see like a fighter with low ground game skill, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go in and submit this person, then you go in and it says, oh, you can't do it, your mats are getting cleaned. So again, realism is a big key. Then they had you can be challenged by other fighters. So you'll just get random challenges for fighters and from fighters, and you can choose to take them, and you can choose not to take them. And actually, no, you can't choose to take those. You actually have to, because that's the only fight that's listed. So sometimes fighters will just call you out, and they'll say, oh, like, not actual call you out, but it'll just show up that this fighter wants to fight you, things like that. So you can just take the fight, and then then there will be challenges in that fight as well. So you'll get challenged by, just say like Miesha Tate or Ronda Rousey, and they'll just say, oh, well, you have to fight Ronda, but you can't be taken down by Ronda, things like that. And you'll gain more fans by doing the challenges. Now, the top contenders do change. Now, there's top contenders in the weight class that you're in, and it'll have actual fighters when you first start. And when it has the actual fighters in it, it has the actual fighters, and then as the story mode progresses, they change. Like, I remember one time when I was playing it, and I looked at the top contenders list, and there was no actual fighters on there. It was all created fighters. So again, adds variety. I thought that was really cool. It's not just the same fighters over and over again climbing the ladder. As you lose, you go further down the ladder, because I would fight like a fighter. They'd be 4 or 5, because once you get the belt, you just fight anyone. So they put at least maybe like in the top 7 up to 1 that you fight for the belt. And once I beat them, they were just off the rankings completely. So I thought that was really cool that they put that in there as well. As the popularity grows, the chants grow louder, and the crowd gets more hype, and the chants from the countries apply. So Brazil has a chant for their fighters. The Irish have a chant for Conor McGregor, things like that. So as your popularity grows and grows and grows higher, those chants actually come into play. So if you make a fighter from Brazil, once you get to that level, when I think it's at least 500,000 fans, you'll just start hearing that Brazil chant. And during the tail of the tape, like when it shows you and your opponent next to you, like the fans will still be cheering, chanting that chant from that specific country. So that was awesome too. The challenges for the fights and the title fights. So when you go to do a title fight, you'll be given certain challenges. Like if you pick bantamweight, you have to fight Holly Holm. If you pick strawweight, you have to fight Ioana Jędrzejczyk, things like that. So, and during those fights, each fighter has certain things. So Holly Holm, you have to like knock her out. You have to wobble her with a straight, a hook, or no, you have to knock her out with a hook, a straight, or an uppercut. And there's another one where you have to wobble her, and there's another one where you can't. There's another challenge that I forget what it is, but there's challenges for title fights, and there's challenges for the call-out fights. So if you fight Misha Tate, you can't get wrestled, things like that. You can choose opponents before becoming champion. So in the first game, you would fight somebody, and they just give you a fight. Like they just say, "You're gonna fight this guy. Get it done." But this game, you actually have up to 3 choices. Sometimes you have 2, and then when you're champion, you just fight whoever. But I just found that it was better that you could have more than just one person. Like, you don't just say, "Oh, I have to fight this guy again." Okay. "Oh, I have to fight this guy." Yeah, that's cool. This time, you actually get a choice in the matter. Like, you can choose who you want to fight because they each have specific rankings. Like, when you first start out, I'm pretty sure you're at 50, and then you have to climb all the way up to the top 10. So once you start there, you can, if you want to take it a little slower, you can just fight the person on the very bottom of the list of choices, which allows you to not climb up as fast to get more fights, to get more attributes and skills for your character. Or you can just choose to fight the top rank and just climb up as fast as you can and become champion. You can simulate training. This was really good. I'm glad they finally had simulate training, just like Fight Night. They had a lot of Fight Night elements in this game, so a lot of people that wanted Fight Night but didn't get Fight Night because they made UFC 2, they'll still like this game because it has Fight Night like elements in it. So you can simulate training, but the thing is, you already have to have the training session complete yourself to be able to simulate. So if you do like a heavy bag, and there's difficulties in it as well, so if you have the heavy bag hands where you just punch it at the certain levels, you unlock that simulation. So if you don't want to just do it, sometimes I don't feel like doing the training sessions, so I'll just simulate them. You can do that in there as well. So that was better that they did that, so you don't have to just play the same old training sessions all the time, but you can also just choose to play them if you want to. There's difficulties for the better boosts. So like I said, there's difficulties. There's easy, medium, and hard. And the difficulties will affect your injury rate as well. So sometimes if you do easy, it'll have low injury rate. Sometimes if you do medium, it'll have low injury rate. And sometimes if you do hard, it'll have just a medium injury rate. And sometimes you won't even get injured. But as you get older, you get higher injury chance. So, and I assume if you just take a lot of damage in fights and just do 5-round wars all the time in title fights, or just 3-round wars all the time in non-title fights, you'll be able to get injured a lot quicker. So again, it all just depends on how you're playing. And if you're just doing submissions, you probably won't get injured as much. But you can simulate the training, and you can do the difficulties. So once you do the difficulties, you can get the better boosts. If you put it on medium, you generally get a mixture of like easy and hard, but you get like a decent amount of points without having to risk high chance of injury. So that was good. There's locked attribute training. So when you do the heavy bag hands, you can only you only unlock points to those. You only unlock points to left hand and right hand power. If you do the kick heavy bag, you can only get points towards left leg and right leg power. And if you do top drills, you can only get ground and pound in top game, and submission offense, better submissions, submission defense, you get to defend submissions, things like that. The first game, you just did training sessions, unlocked points, and then went and put attributes on whatever you wanted, and that took away from the realism, because that's not how it works. You can't just go in and be like, oh, I'm just going to hit Thai pads today, or I'm just going to do some focus mitt work, and then I'm better at my jiu-jitsu. Because that's not how it works. Like, it's more realistic. Like, oh, I'm going to work on my submissions so I get better at my submissions. I work on my striking, I get better on my striking. It was just, I don't know what they were thinking with the first game. It was just really weird. And the fighter personalities, you can choose between Overeem, Dos Santos, Joanna, Ronda Rousey, Rashad Evans, Daniel Cormier, Chris Weidman, Renan Barão, Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor, John Jones, Anderson Silva, and I think I missed one. Roy Nelson, and I don't know if I said Lyoto Machida or not, but if I did, I'm sorry. And GSP. Yeah, I think I actually named all of them, so that's a lot of people that you can actually use for a personality. And I wish they kind of had where you can make your own, but I don't know if they're going to put that in later. I don't know if they're going to save it for the third game if they make one, but that was pretty cool because, again, you get their walkout style. Oh, John Dodson and Demetrius Johnson, you get those guys as well. So, you get their walkout style, you get their post-fight celebration style, and you get their taunts. Or no, you don't get their taunts. You get to pick your own taunt, and you get their walkout and pre-fight and post-fight celebrations. Or pre-fight and then their post-fight celebration. There's no pre-fight celebration. But then you can get the music, which they added a few new songs in there. They kept songs from the first game. Like I said, there's actual fighter themes in this game that you can use for your own fighter. And then they had the taunts where you can select between 12 taunts, and they're actually pretty good. Now the modes. There's 8 modes in total in this game. From the first game, I don't know exactly how many modes there were. I think there was just Fight Now, Career Mode, Online Mode, and that's it. So, and the Skill Challenge mode, which helps you play the game. So that's technically 4 modes. But this game has 8 modes. There's Career Mode, Ultimate Team, Knockout Mode, Practice Mode, Skill Challenge Mode, Create Event, Online Mode, and then the Fight Now mode. Now, those of you who don't know what the Knockout Mode is, the Knockout Mode is just basically, you can just go in, you have health bars, and you just drain your opponent's health bar to 0, and you win the fight. You can choose, and you can have rounds too. So that was a pretty cool addition that they added. They added and then they also added Ultimate Team, which those of you who know what Ultimate Team is, you can create up to 5 people and then have your own team. You unlock cards, things like that. So it's like Madden and NBA 2K when it comes to that type of stuff. I don't know why they would choose that for an EA or UFC game, but they must know something we don't. They have Create Event Mode. Create Event Mode, where you can create your own UFC card, the dream card that you always wanted to make or make in your head. You can make that in the game. I haven't took advantage of that mode yet. I've just been on career mode. I've been hooked on career mode, and when I seen Create Event Mode, I was just like, oh man, I can finally make the card that I always wanted to make. So I'm glad they put that event in the game. I'm going to use it, but I just know that it's going to be a great mode. So that's another mode that's in there. Then there's the practice mode. They actually put a practice mode in there so you can, I'm assuming you can just set the difficulty on it, and you can just go to town, learn to dodge and do takedowns and look for openings, things like that. I didn't use the mode personally because I already know how to play the game. And in the tutorial mode, in the UFC 189 intro that you play at the beginning of the game, you can kind of learn to play it there. So, I don't know. I might just start taking advantage of the practice mode. Now, let's get on to the key things. The key things in this game, the live events where it'll actually show like live UFC fights. So there was a fight last night, Frank Mir versus Mark Hunt, and you can choose the actual fights in the game. So the fighters that are in the game and that are actually on the UFC card, you can choose the fights. You can pick the winners of the fights in the game that are actually in real life. So I found that was really awesome. I didn't do that, but I seen that, and it actually shows when the events are going to take place, so you don't miss anything. After you complete career mode, you unlock the paid DLC fighters. I don't know why they make you buy them. I don't know if it was because I retired undefeated. I don't know if it's because I gained fans and gained legend status. I know that when I beat it, it just said you obtained legend status, so you unlocked fighters. Like, I unlocked Bruce Lee, Sakuraba, Boz Rutan, and Mike Tyson. Those are all paid DLC fighters, and if you have the first game and you start up the second game, it tracks that you played the first game and they give you Bruce Lee for free. When I booted up the game, I got Bruce Lee for free. And then when I beat the game on career mode, they said you unlocked the characters. I almost bought the DLC characters. And then they make you pre-order it to get those characters. So you don't even have to pre-order. So I'm telling you again, you do not have to pre-order UFC 2. Or you did not have to pre-order it to unlock those characters. So if you're sitting there wondering, how am I going to get these characters? Just beat career mode. Like, oh my god, those pre-ordered bullshit. I can't believe that. But yes, you can unlock the characters after you beat career mode. Day 2 fixes. EA fixed this game after 2 days. Or on the second day. I'm sorry. Day 2 fixes. So, the first day, the game played okay. I experienced a crash. That happened with the first UFC too. The first time I played the UFC before the update, it crashed. And the second game before the update, it crashed. But then the second day, I put the game in, and there was an update. So I'm just like, oh shit, like they're updating their game this quick. EA's been notorious for putting out some shit, but they're starting to kick up their game now. So I'm impressed that the second day they're fixing their game. So I'm really excited to see what they're actually going to do when it comes to adding fighters for the future. It's more realistic than the first game. So with submission transitions, the graphics, the injury effectiveness in training, the commentary, the crowd hype, the chants, everything, it's just so much more realistic than the first game. Glitching when fighters clash. Now, sometimes if you throw a kick and the AI throws a kick, you'll clash, and sometimes your enemy will just your character will just slump down like that. Like your character will just slump down and go all ragdoll, and there's nothing you can do. And I'm just like, well, what the fuck? And like sometimes you'll get hit like barely, and then your character will just fall down, and then you struggle to get up. So I hope they fix that too. I mean, there was issues like that in the first game, I believe. I didn't get to experience it because I got the game like a year later, but this time I actually get to see it. So I hope they fix that. Due to Reebok, the customization is very limited. Now, the first game, you could have all these sponsorships. You could have Venom. You could have Muscle Farm, or not Muscle Farm, actual clothing. You could have Nike. You could have Tap Out. You could have Affliction. You could have Bad Boy. You could have Venom. You could have all these crazy Fuji, I believe you could have as well. You could have all of these brand names on your character, and you could make them like have all these sponsorships and make them look cool. But due to Reebok taking over, you could only have Reebok shit on. So that took away from the uniqueness, I guess. If you wanted your character to have Venom stuff, or you wanted your character to have Nike and things like that, so you couldn't put any sponsorships on your trunks because Reebok kind of just ran in and took over all that. But it takes away from the character custom. There's no change in champions when the career starts. So like I said, I did 2 women's bantamweight career modes. And both of them, when I started, Holly Holm was champion. And I'm pretty sure the top 10 contenders were the same too. So it almost feels like you start at a set year every time. So for example, it's like the career mode starts in 2010. So every time you start the career mode, you start in 2010 with the same champion. Things like that. So I just found that kind of weird because it was realistic and you were doing a custom fighter because the Ultimate Fighter coaches change. So why can't the title contenders and the champion change as well? I mean, Holly Holm's not champion now, so are they maybe going to change the champions around now? I mean, the only title change that really happened was Holly Holm, so is she still going to be champion when an update comes? I don't know. Maybe they're going to change it and put Misha Tate as champion. But I just found that it really felt rinse repeat. Like, I don't want to fight the same champion all the time. I want some variety in my gameplay. But it's not a deal breaker. Like, it won't make you not want the game. I just found that they could have had champion changes. The same super fight. Now, in the women's bantamweight, you fight Ronda Rousey for a super fight, and you get challenges in the thing. Like, you can't get clinched by her, you can't get a takedown by her, stuff like that. But again, I did women's bantamweight twice, and the same super fight. I did fight Ronda Rousey the same 2 times, and that's not really a super fight anyway, because I'm just coming up into the ranks, so how's that a super fight? And I don't have a belt, she doesn't have a belt, how's it a super fight? I don't get it. But I just found that really weird. It's the same thing, rinse, repeat. I don't know if it's the same way in all the divisions, but they could have had more super fights, or they could have had actual super fights. Or they could have had it where you could actually make it so you want to super fight yourself and you don't just get called out all the time. There's no classic fight rival mode. Fight Night Round 3 had a classic fights mode, and you could do Ali versus Frazier, you could do Ali versus Foreman, I believe, you could do Gotti versus, what's his name? I think it was Gotti versus Ward, you could do that fight. You could do all the fights that actually happened in the game with the fighters. And the first UFC 2009, had that where you could do, they had that mode where you could do Anderson Silva versus Rich Franklin, and you had to do stipulations, so you had to like knock Rich Franklin out by this certain round, and you had to do it by a knee, things like that. So I don't know why that mode isn't in this game, which is more realistic, and it would have been better. I mean, the intro, the UFC 189 intro, they put you in the 4th round with Robbie Lawler, or with Rory McDonald as Robbie Lawler. So I don't know. They could have did a rival mode. That would have been a cool mode. I mean, Aldo and McGregor, that was like the biggest rivalry of 2015, and they couldn't put in a rival mode. Like, and Cormier versus Jones, that was the biggest rivalry of 2014. I mean, what the hell are they doing? No, 2015. I'm sorry. It was like early 2015 that happened. So from 2014, so it leaked into 2015. But they could have had that. I mean, it was nuts. They could have had all these rivalries. They could have had Rousey and Miesha Tate. They could have had Aldo and McGregor. They could have had Nick Diaz and George St. Pierre. They could have had George St. Pierre. Well, Josh Koscheck isn't even in the game anymore. So they could have had Diaz versus GSP. They could have had a lot of rivalries. They could have had Sonnen versus Silva. There was just a lot of potential there that was just wasted, and I hope they add that mode in later, or they could have had it where because I remember in Fight Night, if your character had a really good fight, that fight that you had with the fighter in career mode would end up in the classic fight mode. That was awesome. Like, why didn't they put that mode back in this game? Like, that would have been so cool if they had did that, but I don't know. Again, I hope all these changes come in updates. Now, the recycled nicknames. The same nicknames are from the very first game, and I'm pretty sure those nicknames are even from Fight Night. So, there's no variety in nicknames at all. It's just the same nicknames over and over again, but again, it's not a deal breaker, but people who want to see, people who look for changes will notice that. There's no UFC fighter video reels, so from the first game, beginning of a fight, and after a fight, sometimes like Ronda Rousey would say, "Oh, I saw your fight last night, that was awesome," and it was like actual footage of the fighters being recorded. So like Benson Henderson would say, "Oh man, your fight was awesome, man, keep winning those bonus checks," or Dana White would say, "Oh man, you got a championship fight coming up, make sure you're ready," things like that. But there was none of that in this game, so it wasn't needed, but like that was pretty cool. Like there was actual fighters like just being like, "Oh man, that was pretty cool, you did that." So I don't know why they took that out of the game, but that's all I noticed. There wasn't any of that in the game. The missing fighters. So Rin Nakai, she's a really good women's bantamweight. She was crazy in the Pancrase promotion and the other fight promotions. She went undefeated for a long time, and then when she went to UFC, she didn't have the best run. Like she just had another loss last night, so that was pretty weird. But she's not in the game. But then there's fighters that suck that are in the game, or there's fighters that weren't even in UFC that are in the game. So she's not in the game. Valentina Shevchenko's not in the game as well, and Randy Couture and Tito Ortiz still are not in the game. What are you doing? There's still not legends in the game that should be in the game, although there's controversy with them going to Bellator, things like that. That might be another reason, but it's EA, so I don't know who really has control of who's in the game and who's not. But I would kind of love to have Tito versus Chuck Liddell again. I really would like to have that. That's another fight for rival mode as well. So I'd really like to have those fights, but they're not in it. So I don't know if they're going to add more legends. I don't know what the character additions are going to be like, because the first one, free DLC for all the characters, I mean, that was pretty damn good on EA's part to do that. And I'm assuming they're going to do it in this time around. So I don't know if they're going to be adding a lot of fighters, a little bit of fighters. I don't know if there's going to be more legends coming. Who knows? But there are missing fighters. There's no challenge fights. So you can't just call somebody out. Like, you can't just be climbing up the ladder and be like, oh man, I want to fight you. Or you can't get called out either. Like, there's no fighters actually talking smack to you, and I found that would have been a lot more interesting, because that actually happens. And a lot of it's not real, a lot of it is real, a lot of it's animosity, a lot of it's not. So that'd be pretty cool to have actual animosity things towards fighters. Like, you see a fighter in the top rank and be like, oh man, I want to take you out, let's fight. And then the fight actually happens. That would have been cool, because again, it actually happens in real life. So again, I don't know why they're not doing a lot of these features that would have been cool to put in the game. Again, I don't know if they're going to be coming in updates, but let's hope they do. Now, you can't, and there's no fight build-ups, like I said, to mention through the no challenge fights. Like, there's no build-ups for your fight. Like, if you're going to be going for the title fight soon, or you're in the top 10, and you're going to be fighting a fighter, there's no build-up for the fight. Like, there's just, the first one had a video reel, like, oh, here's the title fight, and it would show, like, actual fights, and it would show champions winning belts. Like, it would always show John Jones Vitor Belfort, because that was an amazing title fight, and where John Jones almost lost, and then he comes back and wins the fight. So there's none of that. There's no build-up. Like, you just say, oh, you're going to fight the champion next. Go and do training, and you can update your moves, do all that before you go into the fight, and then you go into the fight. That's it. No build-up. I wish they had it, but what can you do? So, with all that said, the final verdict that I would give to this game, now there's 2 ratings, and the reason why that is because for hardcore fans, you'll give it a high rating, and for fans who just want a fighter, who watch UFC here and there, catch the big name fights in like UFC, then you're going to give it a decent score. So for people who are interested in UFC and think the game looks good, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Just because there's very little issues. I only experienced 1 crash, but that was day 1. After the patch, I didn't experience a crash since. There's still that clashing when your fighters hit each other, but again, it's not a deal breaker. You can still fight, you can still play the game, it's still very enjoyable. So I'd give it an 8. Now, for hardcore fans, I would give it a 9 out of 10, only because the fighter likeness is there, the commentary's there, the personalities are there, the mannerisms are there, the taunts are there, everything that makes the characters unique and makes everything, and just makes all the general gameplay, the submission transitions, the career mode is a lot better. There's a lot of improvements there that we wanted that they actually put in the game. They're not all there, but they are apparent that they actually took our words into consideration and put them in the game. So for hardcore fans like myself, I would give this game a 9 out of 10. Just because it's realistic. It's a high improvement from the first game. If you've had the first game, I recommend you go and buy this game right now. I paid $90 for it. $90+ for it, actually. I do not feel ripped off one bit. I would have paid more for it. If they actually had an edition that had actual good stuff in it, that didn't just give Ultimate Team stuff, I would have bought the big special edition, because this game is worth every penny. If you didn't play the first game, I recommend you do, just to get the kind of feel for it, because they kind of play the same, but the second one is a lot more smoother. It's not as bulky, and you don't feel as heavy. Like, depending on the fighter, you'll feel loose. Like, if you're Conor McGregor, you'll feel fast. If you're a heavyweight, you'll feel slow, but depending on who you are, you'll be a little fast. So that was pretty good. So 8 out of 10 for people who are interested, 9 out of 10 for hardcore fans. So that was my review of EA Sports UFC 2. I would give it a must-buy for the hardcore fans. I would even give it a must-buy for the interested people, just because it's a really fun game. The knockout mode would be really fun for a party game. Just the overall gameplay would be good for a party game as well. So, must-buy if you're interested in this game. If you're not, that's fine. You're missing out. It's a really fun game. But, yeah, that was my review on EA Sports UFC 2. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm out. Peace.